I'm not sure if you're aware, but during Jesus' time, there was a radical Jewish group known for its fanatical patriotism, often responsible for causing a series of disturbances. Perhaps one of Jesus' disciples was even a part of this group. We are talking about the Zealots. The Zealots were a nationalist Jewish faction fighting against Roman rule over Israel. The problem was that, in theory, the ideals and purposes of the Zealots often seemed good, right, and understandable. But what happened in practice was quite different. They were frequently violent, committed attacks, and were even at the center of a conflict that resulted in the destruction of Jerusalem. In this video, you will understand who the Zealots in the Bible were, what they did, the mistakes they made, and what actually happened to them. To properly understand who the Zealots were, we first need to know that this term, zealot, appears in the Bible in different contexts. Most of the time, the term seems to simply maintain the original meaning of the Greek zealotes, meaning zealous. This is how, for example, the Apostle Paul spoke of himself as a religious zealot. In the book of Acts, chapter 22, verse 3, Paul said, "I am a Jew, born in Tarsus of Cilicia, but brought up in this city. I studied under Gamaliel and was thoroughly trained in the law of our ancestors. I was just as zealous for God as any of you are today." This is also how the members of Jerusalem were referred to as zealous for the law, indicating zeal for the honor of the Lord, as we read in Acts 21:20. However, the name zealot, applied to the revolutionary group of Jesus' time, indicates a type of fanatical zeal. This same group was also known as nationalists, or Sicarii. In fact, Simon, one of the 12 disciples of Jesus, might have belonged to the Zealots before following Jesus, and perhaps this is why the evangelist Luke identifies him as Simon the Zealot in Luke 6:15. In truth, there are different interpretations at this point. Some scholars consider that Simon might have later been known as the Zealot because of his commitment to the Word of God, but most scholars believe that, considering Luke wrote after 50 AD, it's more likely that this designation had the sense of fanatical patriotism. If this is correct, then the designation zealot, in reference to him, indicates not merely religious zeal, but his association with the radical Jewish group. This nationalist group was probably nicknamed Zealots, because they may have been inspired by the example of Phinehas, who lived in the time of Moses, demonstrating great zeal for the Lord's cause during a period of apostasy among some Israelites in the desert, as recorded in Numbers 25:11. Another possibility is that the Zealots were inspired by the conduct of Mattathias and his sons when Antiochus IV Epiphanes attempted to destroy the Jewish religion. But what was the origin of the Zealots? Likely, the Zealot party originated from the revolutionary ideas of Judas the Galilean. Judas organized and led a revolt in 6 AD against the annexation of Judah as a province directly under Roman rule. The Zealots, under Judas's leadership, refused to pay taxes to a foreign nation and the rule of a pagan emperor over them. They believed that the government of Israel was a theocracy and its land should be dedicated to the Lord. Thus, submitting to Roman rule was seen as a betrayal of God. Having garnered many sympathizers for the cause, the Zealot group grew and caused certain difficulties for the Romans. Many Zealots resorted to force, including attacks and assassinations, believing that as long as a good result was achieved, violence was perfectly justified. The good result they referred to was obviously the breaking of foreign oppression over Israel. In subsequent years, Judas's family members continued leading the Zealots. This resulted in the crucifixion of 2 of his sons by order of the Roman procurator Alexander around 46 AD. Some commentators believe that the criminal Barabbas, who was released instead of Jesus, might have belonged to the Zealot group. Perhaps the crime that led to his imprisonment was precisely an attack against Roman soldiers. The Zealots played a very active role in the Jewish revolt of 66-70 AD, which culminated in the fall of Jerusalem in 70 AD. By 73 AD, the last stronghold of the Zealots, Masada, also fell to the Romans. As a result, many people came to regard the Zealots as those who led Jerusalem to destruction. This explains why the Jewish historian Flavius Josephus, in his work The Jewish Wars, did not refer to the Zealots as truly zealous for God. Instead, he described the Zealots as violent individuals who used daggers or short swords, essentially portraying them as a group of assassins. So what was the error of the Zealots? We can say that the Zealots completely distorted the vision of zeal for the Lord. They claimed to follow the example of great men of God who were truly zealous for the Lord's honor. But unlike them, the Zealots did not act correctly and had inappropriate motivations. Moreover, they thought they could justify any atrocity in the name of God. In this sense, Christians should learn lessons from this bad example of the nationalist zealot group from Jesus' time. We know that being zealously appropriate is something that God certainly appreciates. In the Bible, Christians are admonished to be always zealous in serving the Lord, as we read in Romans 12:11 and Titus 2:14. Their duty is to contribute especially to the edification of the church. Moreover, followers of Christ are expected to be committed and zealous in defending the principles of God in this fallen world, and this can undoubtedly cause discomfort in their daily lives. Although Christians are exhorted in the Bible to submit to authorities, they are also instructed not to be complacent in the face of injustices, perversions, and immoralities that mark this corrupt world. Yes, true Christians are under human governments, but before that, they are under the government of God, recognizing that God is the source of all authority and that human powers are never capable of dethroning divine sovereignty. Therefore, unlike the Zealots of Jesus' time, whose zeal was essentially a fanaticism for transient things and merely earthly patriotism, genuine Christians know they are pilgrims in this world. Aware they are patriots fighting for a heavenly homeland, they know their zeal is not about human ideologies and ethics, but about eternal principles and an unbreakable ethic. They know their commitment is not for the glory of a human ruler, but for the glory of Him who sits on the throne of the universe. These individuals exemplify true zeal, the kind that aligns with God's will, distinct from the misguided fervor of the historical zealots. As dedicated servants of God, they have withstood the greatest adversities throughout history. This enduring zeal has been evident from humanity's earliest days, as seen in the lives of Abel, Enoch, and Noah, who were passionate for the Lord at the dawn of time, in figures like Melchizedek and the patriarchs Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, who remained faithful to the only God even amidst widespread polytheism, and in Joseph, Ezekiel, Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, Azariah, and Nehemiah, who steadfastly honored their commitments to God, even in foreign lands. Similarly, the prophet Elijah and the 7,000 who refused to bow to Baal, rejecting the idolatry prevalent during the reigns of Ahab and Jezebel, demonstrated this true zeal. Unlike the nationalist fanatics of Jesus' time, who were ultimately destroyed by Rome, these paragons of true zeal have not only survived intense persecutions, but have also been instrumental in shaping a legacy of faith, with their ranks encompassing the largest number of martyrs in the history of the world. Their unwavering dedication and commitment to the honor of God and the gospel of Christ epitomize the essence of true zeal. Paraphrasing Tertullian of Carthage, the blood of these zealous people has been, is, and will continue to be the seed of the church.